Hello there, this is Brennan Marr, host of Page Turners They Were Not, a Star Wars podcast. And I'm here to tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the best way to make a podcast. Why is that? Well, first off, it's free. Yes, you heard me right. Anchor is free. Anchor has all the tools you need to make a podcast from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you on various platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can make money from your podcast. And get this, with no minimum listenership. That means you can make money even if no one listens to your podcast. That, of course, is not ideal, as Anchor will allow you to spread your podcast, bring in more viewers, and you can make more money because of it. Everything you need to make a podcast is in one place on Anchor. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you, and may the Force be with you. Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Today, I would like to see a force power that I believe has been seen in the Star Wars films. Before we get into that, here is a report from Slash Film, which is usually very reputable, about Mandalorian Season 2 news. Apparently, Rosario Dawson, star of film and television, is going to be playing Ahsoka Tano in Mandalorian Season 2. Who is Ahsoka Tano, you might ask? Well, if you are not familiar with the character, she was the apprentice or Padawan learner of Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars. She first appeared in the Clone Wars animated film, which, I'm going to be completely honest with you, was a really bad introduction as a character, but later became, I think, and I know a lot of people think, one of the best characters in the Clone Wars series. And then she moved on to appear in Star Wars Rebels as well. She has never been seen in live action, so this should be interesting. I was having a discussion the other day with a friend of mine about if Ahsoka Tano were to appear in live action, what ethnicity or race should the actress be? In my opinion, it doesn't actually matter, considering that she is orange with head tails. But Rosario Dawson, who is of Cuban and Puerto Rican descent, I think that would fit pretty well. I know that for the last 3 years that there has been a discussion among the fans of having Rosario Dawson play Ahsoka in live action. There were even false reports last year that Brie Larson, Captain Marvel herself, had been cast as Ahsoka. Those were not true, and it looks like, if the report is correct, that Rosario Dawson will be Ahsoka. I'll be very interested to see what that makeup and prosthetics look like in a live-action form. But I'm all for it. I'm fine with the casting. I have to confess, I have not seen a lot of the movies starring Rosario Dawson. But she seems to be quite talented and has a good career. And so I'm all for this casting. Okay, let's jump over to psychometry. Psychometry is the art of a Jedi, or not necessarily art, but the power a Jedi has to touch objects and acquire information about the person or people who have held that object, and events also associated from that object, including emotions, sights, sounds. A Jedi could touch it and see where it had been, and see who had wielded that object. The most famous practitioner of this was a Jedi named Quinlan Vos, who appeared in Star Wars The Clone Wars. He was very gifted in tracking people. He was an expert tracker. While he and Obi-Wan were on the trail of a Hutt, Jabba's uncle, Zero the Hutt, Quinlan Vos was able to use the ability to track Zero. This has also been seen in this Jedi Fallen Order video game, where Jedi Padawan Cal Kestis was able to touch objects and see where they've been and see visions of the previous wielders of those objects. Now, it's never been said explicitly, but it is my theory that Rey possessed this ability in the sequel trilogy. When Rey touched Luke's lightsaber in Maz Kanata's castle, she saw a vision of Luke, of the destruction of Luke's Jedi temple, of the Knights of Ren slaughtering people. Also, she saw some of her own memories resurface, as well as hear the voice of Obi-Wan say, "Rey, these are your first steps." So it is my contention that Rey, without knowing it, had the power of psychometry. So that when she touched Luke's saber, she saw his past. She also saw in those images Cloud City, and she heard the voice of Yoda speaking to Luke. She was able to see major events from Luke's past that were tied to that object because Luke was spiritually tied to that object. Now, to be fair, we don't know if Luke's saber, if that saber that Maz held, if he had ever held it again after his hand had been cut off in Cloud City. Because some of the events that Rey sees would not have occurred when Luke had that lightsaber in his possession. However, I do believe that Luke's signature was still on that lightsaber, and so that Rey was able to see events connected to Luke that he did not necessarily experience while in possession of his father's lightsaber. But nonetheless, Rey was able to see what Luke had seen. I do also believe that in The Rise of Skywalker, we see Rey use this ability again when she touches the knife owned by Ochi of Bestoon. When she touches that knife, she hears the violence associated with it. The deaths of her parents as they were killed with that knife. The evil taint of their deaths that was still on that blade. Now, in The Force Awakens, Rey had not really awakened her Force powers yet. So I think her psychometry may have been a latent ability. An ability that she may have possessed without really realizing it. Later, when she touches the knife in The Rise of Skywalker, she is aware of her own abilities. But it would seem that she had that ability. Apparently, the Jedi during the Clone Wars were not as keen on Jedi using it. Because the idea of feeling the dark emotions of someone who used a weapon was, definitely not in keeping with the Jedi's teachings. Or at least their beliefs at that time about the nature of emotion. So, psychometry is, I think, a very interesting skill. In terms of making not only tracking, Quinlan Vos is kind of like a Native American Jedi in terms of being a great hunter and tracker. And he actually visually looks a little bit Native American. Rey doesn't use it for tracking people, but she is able to sense what has occurred with those objects. Now, to my knowledge, we've only seen her do it twice. Once with Luke's lightsaber, and once with the knife that belonged to Ochi. There may be other moments that I'm forgetting. Regardless, I find it to be a fascinating force power. It is also called Sense Echo in Jedi Fallen Order. And really, I think is a very clever force ability. As I said before, it has never been confirmed that Rey was using that ability, but it is my contention that she had psychometry without realizing it. And that is why she was able to see those visions of Luke when she touched his father's famous lilac lightsaber. The color was described as lilac, more than blue, kind of an off blue. So I wonder if any future media will explore more of this force power. And will explore what can be done with this particular power. So those are my thoughts on the force power of psychometry. Let me know if you have any more insights on this force power. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator, and thank you for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.